You are about to watch a short mental film. Imagine your 5th birthday party. The cake. The candles. The faces around you. It feels real, doesn't it? The colors seem vivid. You might even remember what you were wearing, what the room smelled like. Here's what you don't know: that memory, however vivid, is not a recording. It's a reconstruction. And every time you've revisited it, your brain has silently edited, embellished, and potentially replaced details. You may be confident in a memory that has been substantially altered. You may be confident in a memory of something that never happened at all. Memory is one of the most profoundly misunderstood functions of the human mind. The popular metaphor, memory as a video camera, faithfully recording and accurately playing back, is wrong in almost every important way. Neuroscientists now understand that memory is a reconstructive process, not a retrieval process. Each time you remember something, your brain reassembles the pieces from distributed storage, fills gaps with plausible inferences, and is susceptible to contamination from everything that has happened since the original event. The psychologist who has done more than anyone else to document this vulnerability is Elizabeth Loftus of the University of California, Irvine. Her career began in the early 1970s with a deceptively simple question: can the way a question is worded affect what a person remembers about an event? The answer, she found, was yes, dramatically, and in ways that have profound implications for every legal system in the world. In her landmark 1974 study, Loftus showed participants footage of car accidents and then asked them to estimate how fast the cars were traveling when they hit each other. Different groups received different verbs: hit, smashed, collided, bumped, contacted. The group that received smashed gave speed estimates 25% higher than the group that received contacted. But the manipulation didn't stop at estimates. When asked a week later whether they'd seen broken glass in the footage, there was none. The smashed group reported seeing it significantly more often. A single word had not only altered their memory of speed, it had generated a fabricated memory of physical evidence that did not exist in the original footage. This is the misinformation effect. Post-event information contaminates the original memory, not as a separate addition, but as a replacement. The original is not preserved alongside the contaminated version. For many participants, the new version simply becomes the memory. The implications for eyewitness testimony were immediately alarming. At the time of Loftus's research, eyewitness identification was considered among the most powerful forms of evidence in criminal trials. Jurors trusted it intuitively. Judges credited it heavily. But Loftus's work, corroborated by dozens of subsequent researchers, demonstrated that eyewitness memory is uniquely susceptible to exactly the kinds of post-event contamination that police interviews, news coverage, and inter-witness discussion routinely introduce. The Innocence Project, which uses DNA evidence to exonerate wrongfully convicted individuals, has documented that eyewitness misidentification is the leading contributing factor in wrongful convictions, present in approximately 69% of the cases overturned by DNA evidence. In many of these cases, the eyewitnesses were not lying. They were genuinely confident. Their memories had been contaminated and they had no way to know it. Certainty is not a reliable indicator of accuracy. The two are frequently uncorrelated. But false memories extend far beyond misidentifying a face in a lineup. Loftus's most disturbing experiments showed that entirely fabricated events, things that never happened at all, can be implanted into memory with modest effort. In her Lost in the Mall study, published in 1995, Loftus and colleagues gave subjects booklets containing descriptions of childhood events. 3 were real, supplied by family members. 1 was entirely fabricated: getting lost in a shopping mall as a child, being helped by an elderly stranger, and being reunited with family. Participants were asked to write what they remembered about each event over multiple sessions. By the final session, approximately 25% of participants had produced detailed, coherent memories of the fabricated mall event. They remembered feelings of fear. They described the face of the stranger who helped them. Some added details not in the original description. When told the event was fictional, several were resistant to accepting this. The memory felt too real to be false. Later studies pushed the boundaries further. Researchers used doctored photographs to implant memories of hot air balloon rides that subjects had never taken. Other studies implanted memories of committing crimes. A 2015 study published in Psychological Science found that roughly 70% of subjects could be led to produce false memories of committing a crime, including assault, through interview techniques alone. Not all produced equally vivid memories, but the majority generated some false recollection. The therapeutic context produced some of the most damaging applications of false memory research. During the 1980s and early 1990s, a surge of therapists employed recovered memory techniques, hypnosis, guided imagery, dream interpretation, to help patients retrieve supposedly repressed memories of childhood trauma, often abuse. Some of these patients developed elaborate, detailed memories of satanic ritual abuse that investigators found no corroborating evidence for. Families were destroyed. Innocent people were imprisoned. Loftus was called as an expert witness in many of the resulting trials and became a controversial figure in the process. Her testimony threatened to undermine not just fabricated memories but, critics argued, genuine trauma narratives. The debate about repressed memory versus false memory implantation remains contentious. What is not contested, that memory can be implanted, that hypnosis increases suggestibility rather than accuracy, and that therapeutic techniques can inadvertently create memories of events that did not occur. The neuroscience of why false memories are so convincing begins with how memories are stored. Memory is not a single unitary system. It's distributed across multiple brain regions, with the hippocampus playing a central role in binding together the components of an episode. When you remember an event, the hippocampus retrieves these components and reassembles them. But the components themselves, emotion, location, sensory detail, meaning, are stored in different regions. Any component can be replaced or supplemented without your awareness. The emotional component is particularly susceptible. Research by cognitive neuroscientist Daniel Shatter, who cataloged what he called the 7 sins of memory, identified that emotionally arousing events are remembered as more vivid and certain, but not necessarily more accurate. The feeling of certainty that accompanies a vivid memory is generated by the emotional system, not the accuracy monitoring system. High confidence feels like truth. It isn't. Sleep has been found to both consolidate and transform memories. During the consolidation phase that occurs during sleep, memories are transferred from short-term to long-term storage, but this process involves reinterpretation and reorganization. Studies have found that people who sleep between an experience and a misinformation presentation are more susceptible to the misinformation effect than those who are tested immediately. Sleeping doesn't preserve a memory. It edits it. Social contamination is one of the most underestimated sources of false memories. When multiple witnesses discuss an event after it occurs, they inadvertently incorporate details from each other's accounts into their own memories. This post-event co-witness contamination has been documented in numerous studies and has direct implications for how criminal investigations should be conducted. Witnesses who speak to each other before being interviewed by police may be cross-contaminating what are, after the conversation, genuinely shared but partially fabricated memories. Social media has created a new and largely unstudied mechanism for false memory formation. When we document experiences through photos and posts, we may actually be impairing rather than preserving the original memory. Research by Linda Henkel found that photographing objects impairs memory for their features compared to simply observing them, a phenomenon called the phototaking impairment effect. We outsource the memory to the device and the brain releases it. What we later remember may be the photo's framing, not the experience. Collective false memories are also real. The Mandela effect, named for the widespread false memory that Nelson Mandela died in prison in the 1980s, is a phenomenon where large numbers of people share the same specific false memory. While this has been misappropriated by conspiracy theorists to suggest parallel universes, the psychological explanation is more mundane: shared cultural exposure, social transmission, and the same reconstructive memory mechanisms operating on the same cultural material produce convergent false memories across populations. Loftus's research has forced a fundamental reconceptualization of memory's purpose. We tend to think of memory as being for the past, for preserving what happened. But evolutionary theory suggests memory may primarily be for the future, for enabling flexible, adaptive prediction and planning. A system optimized for future prediction doesn't need perfect accuracy. It needs plausible reconstruction. Our memories are not broken. They're doing exactly what they evolved to do. Just not what we thought. The practical implications are significant and, in some ways, disturbing. You cannot trust the feeling of certainty in your own memories as evidence of their accuracy. Your most vivid childhood recollections may contain substantial fabricated material. Your memory of an argument, of a contract, of an event, has been revised every time you've revisited it. The people in your life who remember shared events differently from you are not necessarily lying or misremembering. You both may be. There is no reliable internal signal that distinguishes true memory from false. Loftus concluded decades of research with an observation that applies far beyond the laboratory: memory is like a Wikipedia page, you can go in there and change it, but so can other people. The implications are uncomfortable in an age of political conflict, contested histories, and social groups whose cohesion depends on shared narratives. The memories that bind us, personal, cultural, and political, are not archives. They're living documents, subject to ongoing revision by exactly the forces that benefit most from controlling the narrative. The most honest response to this research is not despair, it's epistemic humility. Holding your memories with slightly less certainty. Being slower to conclude that someone who remembers things differently is simply wrong. Understanding that the confidence you feel about an event is not evidence of its accuracy. And recognizing that the stories you've told yourself about your past, however essential to your identity, may be partially composed of additions, alterations, and inventions that you will never be able to identify. That's what your brain did. It's not a malfunction. It's the design.